So good morning. Before I get started with my prepared remarks, I'd first like to thank everybody involved for bringing everybody together today because as I'll get to later, events like today are important. They matter to those that have long since taken away the uniform and stopped serving, or at least stopped serving in uniform. And they matter to those of us that still are serving. Whether it's my 18-year-old airman, or those of us that are nearing the end of our time in uniform service. Standing here today, where we're about to share a meal, I'm reminded of a conversation I had last week. So I was in the line at the DFAC, the dining hall on base. I was waiting for my meal to be prepared, and one of the airmen was behind the counter. So I struck up a conversation with him. Turns out he was 18 years old, just past his 18th birthday. He had enlisted at 17 with the parental approval, which is required for our most junior troops. Shortly went off to training school and deployed immediately upon getting to his first base. He had just returned when I was talking to him, in time for his 18th birthday. So that's how junior some of our folks are. That puts him younger than my daughter, that is currently at the University of South Carolina. So personally, that's a big moment for me when I start being older than our troops are younger than my children. And it really drives home the point that I was struck by, not just with his youth, but also the experience that he had already obtained just shy of his 18th birthday. And I know some folks in the audience today share that experience. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Ryan LeBlanc, the commander of the 375th Civil Engineer Squadron. Jumped a few units here, but 375th here. Civil Engineer Squadron here at Scott Air Force Base. I'm a veteran of Iraq, Afghanistan, the international effort against the Islamic State here recently. And at 45 years old, I'm the oldest member of my unit. In fact, I'm as close in age to the Vietnam veterans that I used to look up to as I am to my most junior troops, which as I prepared for this speech was striking to me, because I never really considered myself all that close to the Vietnam era guys. But now that's probably how my troops look at me, because frankly they were just being born when I had my first deployment. When we picture young veterans, it's usually in relation to today's wars. We picture the young folks that are going off now, and we think of the Iraq War, we think of Afghanistan, and we think, man, those guys are young. But when we hear the word veteran, often it's the members in the room here. But what I'd ask you to think of is to acknowledge the fact that this greatest generation, the silent generation, the baby boomers, and the millions of the older Americans that are veterans of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, well, they weren't always older folks. When they got some of these experiences, they were those 17, those 18-year-olds. For many of us, though, these are our parents and our grandparents, and we view them today, or we view them then as we know them today, experienced, wise, and mature. But when they served, when they first answered our nation's call, and they selflessly thrust themselves into Europe or the Pacific, they were barely older than the freshmen and sophomores in the back that are the junior ROTC today, and then may end up being some of our servicemen tomorrow. The average age of soldiers in those conflicts was a mere 23 years old. For those in this audience that haven't served, and I appreciate the mayor's remarks, think of how impactful the experiences of your late teens were and your early 20s were in shaping the rest of your life. And now think of how those experiences may have shaped theirs. So today, on Veterans Day, we gather to recognize our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, now Space Force, and Coast Guard veterans who have sacrificed both in war and in peace to protect America and the American way of life. I'm proud that I still have the opportunity to wake each morning and don this uniform. But the majority of the veterans that we honor today have long since separated from active service. Many have gone on to become our teachers, our policemen, our firefighters, and they rarely, if ever, share the stories of their youth as they quietly became part of our communities. Well, today is their day. It's a day to remember, and it's a day to share. A day to highlight their sacrifices, and a day to thank them for their service. Because remembrance is the essence of the Veterans Day celebration. It's why it was put in place. Remembering the bonds forged in good times and in challenging moments. And I know that plenty of folks in the audience, have plenty of stories about the good times of the time they served. Between young men and women serving far from home and on behalf of a grateful nation. Remembering their accomplishments and the impact of their efforts in shaping the world for the better. Remembering their willingness to answer the nation's call in its time of need. Because war is a serious business and it has a real cost. It's got a real impact on those who serve. My fellow veterans in the crowd today understand this truth. And they carry similar memories. And because of this, they understand each other's service without the need to continuously share their stories and share their past. They are also incredibly humble about their sacrifice and their accomplishments. Some time ago, I joined the VFW to hear the stories, specifically of the World War II and the Vietnam crowd. I was a younger service member, and frankly, you want to hear it firsthand from the guys who have done it and the girls who have done it before you. But they never told those stories, and you had to drag those stories out. They were either too humble or they had put that part of their life in the past. And that's okay, but I'd ask you to think differently about it now. Today, I'd ask veterans here to open up and direct their words not only to each other, but to those that do not have that shared experience when you leave today. This Veterans Day, my fellow veterans should celebrate by telling their stories and sharing our history in such a way that the broader audience can not only appreciate your individual service, but so they might understand it better. And in so doing, you not only allow them to better appreciate your past, but to better understand the experiences of those of us that still serve and still rely on community support. My grandfather, who served in the Navy and passed away 8 years ago, never spoke of his service while I was growing up. I was at his home frequently, but our conversations were usually about whatever was going on in my life, or LSU football. It wasn't until the end of his life, when he was struggling with Alzheimer's disease, that I caught a glimpse into just how much his service meant to him. With nearly 90 years of life well lived behind him, and with failing memories due to a terrible affliction, the one memory that remained, that he and I discussed over and over, and for those of you familiar with Alzheimer's, often on a loop, about 5 minutes at a time. Hey Ryan, did you know I served in the Navy? Yes, Granddad, I knew. And then we would roll through that story. It was of his time training with the Navy and training sailors on their way to Europe to fight in World War II. It was the one memory that really remained vivid as he got older. He was too modest to share these stories when I was older, but it was clear that he carried the pride of his service his entire life. Today, I urge you not to allow this to happen to your memories. So here's the call to action. Celebrate today and the days that follow by engaging each other, both retiree or military veteran and civilians, and sharing our history. Humble veterans must share their stories. Family and friends must openly listen to understand them. And in so doing, we allow this single day of remembrance to become a springboard to a shared understanding of exactly what we continue to ask our American youth that don the uniform every day in service to our nation. Thank you.